First of all, no. No, you do not have to make a character voice to be a decent role player or even a great role player. You just full stop, you don't have to do that. Actually, don't do that. Moro, and welcome to Culinary Role Playing. My name is Walter, and I'm glad you found me. So, I wanted to take a little break from my own tabletop RPG game development and come sit down on the floor with you to be more grounded and talk about roleplay. For me, roleplay is improv. It's literally one-to-one long-term improv. Improv is a skill that you can learn. So if improv is a skill you can learn and improv is roleplay, roleplaying is a skill that you can learn. So when deciding what to film next, I did whatever average and socially awkward content creator would do. I went to Google and Googled the topic I wanted to talk about. Because I didn't want to rehash on a video idea that has been done already a million times and well. So it doesn't provide any value to you or to me to make that video. And what I found was, well, so full disclosure, I did like 45 minutes of research on the topic, like how many videos have already been done or how many blog posts have already been written, and I like dabbled into many of those tutorials, but most of those that I did see, most of them sounded and felt more like lifestyle guides to be yourself and trust your friends and don't take it too seriously, just jump into it. Just come up with a funny character voice so it's really easy for people to distinct when you are in character and out of character. First of all, no. No, you do not have to make a character voice to be a decent role player or even a great role player. You just full stop, you don't have to do that. Actually, don't do that. This is gonna be a long video. While it's really good to hear, and while the videos are true that you shouldn't take role-playing too seriously and you just should go for it, I'll give you some nice hints that you can work on to have like an actual technical advice on how to roleplay. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. I will give you 3 advice that will instantly make you a better role player when you apply this to your own thing. How much better role players, that's solely dependent on you. Then we are gonna have this kind of example where we make this hypothetical situation with a character, and I will apply these 3 advice into that scenario so you can have some actual examples on what I'm meaning by these 3 advice. And after all that, I will give you some hard facts on improv and roleplay. But because improv is roleplay, so just facts. Okay, let's go. What? What? What's... Hold still, hold still. What's that? What? Well, look at that! It's the subscribe button to this channel. Maybe you should click it. And that's called acting. So, you can trust me. I am a professional actor, and I know what I'm talking about. So, advice number 1, and I really try to not go into a rant, because this is not a rant video, this is an advice video. Okay, let's try this. So one of the advices that you got from the internet was to create a deep backstory and always lean on the backstory when you feel like conflicted and do not know what to do. I meant to save the hard truths on the end of the video, but I really need to give you one right now. Hear me out. No amount of background writing character development and overall just like character design and preparation will make your character any more believable or alive until you have played that character at least one session. The character only comes alive when you start playing the game. Because just like real people, characters are not created in a vacuum of single person's thought. The character will be just an idea before it has had experiences and it has reacted to the environment, because we are partially and almost basically like 50-50, we are created by our environments and what decisions we make in those environments. We are created by the choices we make. I will probably add a zoom in this because this is an important fact that we will come back into later. So TLDR, you might as well be smart with your prepping your character before writing like 3 pages of character background. And I know what you're gonna say. I know there are people like who say, but I like creating character background. I like writing my 5 pages of the whole story before we start this adventure, which is nice. And if you like writing, go write a story. That's great. That's great for you. But remember, all the things you write in your character background are assumptions and expectations that you have of the world as well, not only from your character. And those assumptions and expectations can be completely crumbled. They can be completely destroyed while playing the game. Of course, you can establish some truths and your GM should respect that. But most of the time, because we are creating this imaginary worlds as a group, those things will change and you will have to be ready to let those things go. And more you write and more expectations you have, it's harder to let those things go. Keep that in mind. So what one should write into their character backstory then? I'm glad you asked. This can vary, and of course your GM might ask you to write something else or more or less. But for me, you should write a single sentence and then a dramatic pole. Let's start with the simple sentence. The simple sentence is why your character is and what your character is doing. Because what we usually are... Oh my god. Microphone, calm down. What we are usually asked to write down in our character forms is basically like we have like motivations and we have character fears and we have character hopes. But that really doesn't help you in the situation, in the story or in the adventures you are going in, unless it has been like completely written and completely made in a way that all the players of the table are like prepared and they are invested in everything you write down. So let's create an example character. Let's be Bob the Potato, who is also an edgelord rogue. So we have Bob the Potato, and if I would need to create a background statement for Bob the Potato, it would be something like, my family is in debt to a crime syndicate, so I am stealing to pay that debt back. And why we want to write down an action is simply because action drives another action. If we would have like an adjective or a substantive, that is a static thing, that is a statement that might not change. But when you have a verb, in verb you are expecting, verb is basically like an activation word, you know, something will happen out of the verb. For example, if I would have a background statement, my family owes money to a crime syndicate, so that's why I'm gloomy all the time. So what? Like, you're gloomy. It doesn't take you anywhere. It doesn't tell anything about what my character will do or want to do. Or even like my family owes money to a crime syndicate, that's why I am a rogue now. Like, okay. You see what I'm doing here? Like, the sentence doesn't create a lot of like questions. But when I'm stating, that's why I am stealing money, it already sets my character to motion. Like, I have clear motivation what I'm going to do. I'm going to steal money, or I'm going to get the money from somewhere. Like, it already has a lot of more momentum in that sentence, you know, if you know what I mean. And then this is actually a really good dramatic tool from a role-playing game called Hillfolk, and the game system it uses, I think it's called the drama game system. It's written by Robin D. Laws. It's really good game overall. Like, if you really want to play very role-play heavy game, it's basically like improvisation gamified. I actually leave a link down below for the book if you want to see it. But what Robin uses in Hillfolk's character sheet is called dramatic poles, and I think this is an excellent tool, and we can steal it and add it to our statement background sentence. So what the dramatic poles means is that you should pick two dramatic opposites that align with your statement, that provide you some possible moral dilemmas that you can use in your adventures. If we had the statement, my family is in debt to a crime syndicate, so that's why I'm stealing money, our dramatic poles could be honor and desperation, meaning that there will be a lot of choices during the adventure when we are probably stealing stuff or we decide not to steal stuff. We will fight on the balance on how desperately we want to save our family from being in debt, and how much our character is basically like under the influence of this crime syndicate. And then also the honor of like keeping our morals up and possibly building us the possibility for character growth for the character. Maybe we can overcome the situation by dealing with the crime syndicate, with possibly our new friends and stuff. But yeah, that is simple. Those two things already gives you motivations to do stuff around the adventure, and it also tells about your character, like what they do and also why they do it. And I know like people like to have these kind of mystery backgrounds and the big reveals during the adventures, like about their dark and secretive past, but I think the more open you are with the whole group and stating your character's intentions, the more opportunities you give other players and the GM to play around your character and actually support your character's like narrative and storyline. So don't keep everything to yourself. Like give at least 90% of your character, maybe 10%, some small details you can maybe reveal later if you want to be the secretive guy. But yeah, anyway, that's my advice number one. Clean out your character background, make it simple, make it clear, because then when you come back to your character, you don't have to like go through like 5 pages and be confused like, well, would my character do this in this situation, or did I have like some kind of trauma that stops me from doing this? You have the one sentence and you can always come back to that if you have to like think about yourself, like what my character should be doing in this situation. Okay, then advice number 2, and this basically rims with the idea that you don't have to have a funny or interesting character voice, and you don't have to talk a lot to be an engaging character at the table. This is simple. Actions speak louder than words. You don't have to be talking with every character all of the time. You don't have to be talking about yourself, talking about the world. What your character does is way more important. And this can be simple things, like if you are feeling like it's really difficult for you as a person to like get into the character and feeling like you feel like awkward at role playing and you don't feel like what to do. It's really easy to just, for example, if you go into a king's castle and you are meeting up with the king, and the GM might tell you that the people are bowing in front of the king. You can just say, my character bows in front of the king. You can just tell what your character does. Or if your character is the only character that sees somebody is escaping, like some enemy is escaping, and you don't feel like, how can I say this in character? You can just say, my character points at the door. Point with your hand and be like, my character points this door to everyone else. And you don't have to like say anything to try to sound interesting or dramatic. You can just say what your character does. And I promise you, doing something is always way more dramatic and engaging than just having a long monologue. So don't worry if you feel like you are not the most talkative person in the room. Just by showing with simple actions that you have been listening and you engage with the narrative as your character through actions, that is more than enough, and people will think that you are a really good role player. That's all it is. It's just listening and accepting other people's narratives and also adding into that narrative. And that's where we get into our third advice. And I think this final advice is the most important one, because it is something that even professional improvisers and professional actors struggle with sometimes. It's very simple, but it's also very difficult at the same time. Rather than trying to be interesting character, try to make your character interested in the environment and the situation. When your character is curious, your character is engaged, your character is listening, your character is a way better role player than any of the other trying to be interesting characters and like full on. If you just listen to others and you engaged with the things that they tell you and you react to those things, that makes you a great role player. It's a really simple advice, I know, but surprisingly difficult to many people, to many people. In practicality, what I mean with this is that try to find the things when other people are telling about aspects about their characters, they are telling about aspects of the story. Think about in which of those aspects my character would be interested in and engaged with them, with their ideas. Don't think about what my character would do right now. Listen to all the stuff that is happening and think about, okay, my character would want to engage with that activity. And that will pull you into the story. And at some point, I think your character's personal stuff will come into action, but most definitely you will be paraded as the greatest role player there is, because that will automatically validate the story and make the story go forward, because you are engaging with the story. And that makes your character also interesting. Let's take an everyday example. If there's a person in the middle of the street and the person is shouting to everybody, hey, look at me, how interesting I am, hey, look at me. I would say people would think that guy is weird, and maybe they would watch that person a second, but probably they would go forward and not even think about twice. But if the same character would be in the middle of that park or the street and would be watching like in one direction and be like, what's that? Is that like that smoke looks so weird, like being just fixated into something and making a conversation about the environment or something about the location that somebody else points out, that will draw people in and be like, what's that thing about? Like, yeah, that is weird looking smoke. And that will actually bring people closer to the situation, and it will attract more interest because you are interested in something, and that is something that people can relate to, and that is something people get interested in as well because it has intention. It's a verb, it's an active thing you're doing. It's not an subjective or adjective about your character. Neighbors. I hate neighbors. Don't come into my cave, neighbors. This is my cave. Shh, I'm making a video. Let's make this kind of short hypothetical situation of a starting adventure with our Bob the Potato edgelord rogue. I wanted to take edgelord rogue as an example because like so many people like to play like these dark and mysterious characters, and because they can be a very antagonistic characters, and they can be like this kind of lone wolf, which doesn't work well on a base level. It doesn't work well as a group, in a group situation. But that's why I want to give this extreme example that you can see how to like work with this kind of a character archetype. Bob the Potato, the thief who was wrongfully indebted to this crime syndicate, and their family is basically taken hostage until the Bob the Potato has collected all the ransom money to save the Bob's family. So Bob goes into the inn and meets all the rest of the adventurers. And normally what stereotypical edgelord players would do in this situation would be like making really clear to all the rest of the characters, like, I don't trust you, I work alone. And usually the explanation for this would be like, that's what my character would do. But now circling back actually into the Hillfolk book, there is one section that really resonated with me when I read it, and is that like the common explanation for people to do things that are opposition to the narrative is because that is what their character would do. But even in real life, we do contradicting things. That's in human nature. We do a lot of things that we don't understand, and that goes against like our character, basically. And that actually is what makes your character real, to have those exceptions that will actually like underline your character. Like if your character is gloomy and doesn't trust anyone, but then there is a situation where the character trusts somebody, it makes it a huge deal. It makes it a huge character moment. So that's why when we have those dramatic poles within our character, those can be actually a really good guideline to the whole navigation of like conflicting things. Like, yeah, my character would be like, I don't trust you guys, I go my own way, and basically end the conversation there. But if I'm trying to be interested in those characters, in those other characters, and in that situation, rather than trying to be interesting, my character would be like, I don't usually trust anyone, but for some reason against my better judgment, I shall trust you, but just for now. That character sounds way more interesting, doesn't it? That internal conflict and doing things against their own interest, it really starts to build up the character. It really starts to like, you want to basically see behind the character even more. And you can actually use your character's aspects to give more space to other people to shine. For example, when you have this edgelord character who doesn't like people, maybe you accept a quest, and for their better judgment, your character decides to trust these heroes. And then you might be like planning that you shall go into the quest like in the evening, but first you will go to shops. In this situation, you can say like, I really don't like people, and I especially don't like the shopkeepers here. You go ahead, let's meet up in that location. Now you can play into your deep, mysterious character who doesn't like people and take yourself out of the scene and give the other people who wants to talk to the clerks more limelight. But it's still like you don't make yourself as this, like you can be opposive and contradicting even though you are not disruptive to the story, if it makes any sense. Utilizing also the dramatic pulse on like, well, we had like the idea of desperation and honor. Like you don't have to rob every people you see, because you have the option to be like, no, like this is not right. Even though you would be like the most chaotic neutral person there is. Like still you could have like, you would have some ideas of who you want to steal from and who you don't want to steal from. So there is like few examples on how to have a clear and simple character background, be engaged with the narrative, and actions speak louder than words. For example, the actions speak louder than words, that the character decides to trust the heroes against their own best interest, even though they wouldn't like want to talk a lot of other people. That's a huge decision already, and that's already role-playing and getting you into the story. Or the other part where you have like space to go and do your own thing without being disruptive and giving the other people more space to role-play. That is also role-playing by making the decision that I don't go to the store because I'm the edgelord and I will meet you at the point that is relevant to me personally again. That is creating the story. And I promise you, with the right group, when you actually help aiming the spotlight to other characters and to the story, that will make you a good role player, and the spotlight will shine on you at some point. If you want to, and if you don't want to, like, more power to you. You don't have to be spotlight at all if you don't want to. You can use these same things to be engaged within the story while still like giving the spotlight to others. If you don't want to have like these deep conversations as characters and you don't feel comfortable doing that, but you still want to play with the group, you can do that. You can have like these meaningful choices that give the spotlight to other people, and they show that you are listening, they show that you are engaged, and you can still play as your character quite easily. And now finally, let's hear some hard truths about improvisation, and then to an extent role-playing. The hard truth number one we already discussed. No amount of preparation will make your character come alive. They will only come alive when you sit down at the table and start playing the character. Simple as that. Hard truth number two. You can be the best, and I mean simply the best improviser, role player in the whole world. But if the rest of the group are disruptive or not interested, you can't be a good role player. In solo play, you can be a great role player by yourself. But if you're playing with a group, there is only so much you can do. If other people are not engaged, or if other people are hugging the spotlight, it will disrupt the story at some point. Like, no matter the practice, no matter how well you are good at riffing, even with difficult people, sometimes the chemistry is just not there. And it's really difficult in a sense that in a professional world, when we are talking about improvisation, everyone knows like it's a job, and they try to keep it professional. But like, of course, when we play role-playing games, we want to be the heroes. We want to hug the spotlight sometimes. Like, that's a natural thing that people want to do. And especially when we combine this role play against people who don't know these things, like how to improvise, how to create narrative, how to move narrative forward, how to deal with character conflict. Eventually that will easily create some friction within the group. That's just how it is. And hard truth number 3, if you want to be better role player, you have to learn improvisation. You have to pick up book, and I really don't mean this, how to be a better role player books. No, you have to pick up an actual improvisation books and read about improvisation. In the deep core of everything, improvisation is really easy. It's about accepting the situation and building on top of that situation. I know it sounds really easy, but it is really simple. But it's really difficult for people to keep it simple, because they want to make everything interesting. They want to add these extra spins into the story. They want to tell their story in the table, when you should just tell a story. And being humble is really, really, really difficult, especially in a heroic fantasy world, for example, or in a heroic sci-fi world. It's really difficult to be humble, but that's what you need to do if you want to be a great role player. That's it. Hopefully you found this information at least interesting. And these are my opinions, of course. So these are not the absolute truths, but these are things that I have seen work well in practice. And these are philosophies that have guided me in my life until this point and have worked quite well. And it's just observations as well. Please leave a comment down below on your top 3 advice to role playing, and tell me about your edgelord stories. I will definitely read them if you leave me some comments. That's all for me today, and hopefully I find you again real soon. Moro moro.